Hi, I'm Lynne Golodner, and you're listening to the Make Meaning podcast. I'm a former journalist and the author of 9 books, a writing coach, and a marketing expert. In this show, I interview authors and people in publishing about how they find inspiration, how they build their brands and choose their publishing paths, and most of all, how they find meaning in the mundane. If you want to learn more about how to get your writing career off the ground, visit my website, lynnegolodner.com, and check out the classes, programs, and retreats that I offer. And if you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star review at Apple Podcasts or on any podcast platform where you find the Make Meaning podcast. I hope these stories give you the courage and confidence to make your writing dreams come true. Thanks for listening. Jonathan Whitelaw is an author, award-winning journalist, and broadcaster. After working on the front line of Scottish politics, he moved into journalism. There, he's written about everything, from breaking news to the arts, culture, and sport, and on to fashion, music, and even radioactive waste. His writing has appeared in The Sun, The Daily Mail, The Scotsman, STV, and The Scots Magazine, as well as numerous international newspapers and websites. He's also a regular reviewer on the BBC, specifically for arts reviews on the afternoon show on BBC Radio Scotland. Jonathan also regularly contributes to book events and festivals with appearances on the Blood Brothers podcast and the Bloody Scotland Book Club. His most recent novel, The Bingo Hall Detectives, features a mother and son-in-law detective duo trying to catch a killer in the Lake District of England. I'm thrilled to speak with Jonathan Whitelaw on this episode of the Make Meaning podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a real pleasure. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Yes, this is great fun. And there's so much that I have to ask you, starting with the fact that you wrote your first novel when you were just 17. I want to hear how that came to be and about those early years of writing.
Yeah, wow, it was a long time ago now. Yeah, and it feels even longer. That's what happens when when you've been a journalist for 12 years or what have you. That feels like 120 years. But yeah, I mean, that was the thing about, I'd always written. Ever since I could write, I'd always written little stories. I remember going on vacation with my family when I was younger, maybe about 5-6 years old. And I always used to take my Star Wars action figures with me and my Lego and things like that. And it got to the stage where it was getting really, really out of hand, as in like my parents were paying a small fortune every time we went to the airport in excessive baggage. So my stepdad rather cleverly came up with the idea of giving me a pad and a pen or a pencil and saying, we're not taking the toys with you. No more X-Wings and Batmobiles and things like that in the case. But what you can do is you can write stories. So that's what I used to do. I used to write the stories for my action figures at home, my Lego and things like that at home. And then when I came back after, whatever, a week, 10 days, 2 weeks or what have you, I used to act out. I used to act out the stories that I'd written over the course of the vacation.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that went on and on and on for decades, obviously. And then it wasn't until I was about 16, 17 years old, round about that time, that I properly thought, do you know what, I'm gonna make a stab of actually sitting down and writing like a proper narrative, start, middle, end, and character development and stuff like that. And honestly, I mean, I don't mind telling you, Lynn, it was the absolute worst. The worst mashup of The Hobbit meets Die Hard. And do you know, I don't even have it. I don't even have it anymore. I don't even have the manuscript anymore. But that's probably for the best. It's been lost to history. Thankfully, lost to history. Yes. But it was good fun. And some of the lessons that I taught myself and I learned as I did it, the discipline of actually sitting down, writing every day, and character development and stuff like that. I still use those 20 odd years later. It's remarkable. I learned much more about myself wanting to become a writer from it than I ever did in terms of writing anything good,
Yeah. I mean, that's really such a lovely story, though, because it takes great discipline and focus and creativity to want to sit down at such a young age and write a complete manuscript. And, early manuscripts often are terrible and, except for the odd lucky person. But
Don't you
I
just
think
hate them?
I know, right? Like they get it right the first time around. It's like, who are you? And we cannot be friends, So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
but I love that. And I think it's really a very tender story to hear about you writing stories for your action figures and that creativity. And I love that you haven't abandoned the imagination and the creativity that you had in your youth. Because, I teach a lot of writing and a lot of people come to me at midlife and say, I've always written, but, and they just sort of squelched it because it wasn't acceptable or it wasn't
Yeah.
lucrative or whatever. And they have to resurrect the creativity. So it sounds like you've been able to keep it intact and help it grow over the years.
Well, I've been very, very lucky. I've had a very, very strong support network, through my family who've always been very, very supportive of my writing, friends, my wife, obviously, as well, and now my son. Everyone's always been very, very, very supportive of my ambitions to be a full-time writer. And, you make a really, really good point there, Lynn. I think that's a big, big mistake that people tend to make, is that, you're too old to start writing. You're too old to get your debut published. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. As long as you are old, as long as you can write and you can learn to write and you're willing to write, then it doesn't matter what age you are. And it's the same the other way around. You're never too young either. That's the one wonderful part of this industry, is that it's open-ended at either end, and you really should never ever feel something like age is a barrier to stopping you from putting some words down on the page. Yeah, absolutely.
And if it's something you love, you should just keep doing it, because all
definitely.
those outside voices, they will say all kinds of things, but that doesn't mean you have to listen to them, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely that. I like yourself, I do a lot of teaching here in Canada. I work creative writing workshops and crime writing workshops, obviously, given that I'm a crime author. And one of the first things that I always tend to teach in the very, very first class is you've got to write. That's it. If you want to be a writer, you've got to actually get the words down on the page. And often what I will say is, there's no use me sitting here and saying, write 2,000 words a day or write 500 words a day. You've got to come up with what works for you, because ultimately you're the one that's got to do it. I can't write the book for you.
Sure.
You can't write my books for me either. And that's the great, really, it's actually quite liberating. It's quite a liberating feeling to have when you know that it is all up to you. It's intimidating as well. I mean, I still get it when I sit down and write a new project, when you've got that blank Word document facing you.
Yeah.
It is intimidating, but it gets better the more you do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have so many questions, but then another one just popped into my head, so I'm going to go with it. But you know that I just spent July in Nova Scotia.
Yes.
And so I drove from Detroit, which is right on the Canadian border, and all the way up, and then drove back. And when I go places, I like to meet local authors and read books by local authors and about the place. And I find it so fascinating just to see the different styles and the different ways that people interact with culture and place and, lineage and everything. And so I'm curious, because I know that you're originally from Scotland, but you live in Canada. And I wonder how those two meet, if they do, in your writing or influence you, or have you seen changes since you went to Canada? Anything about that sort of impact or influence?
It's very interesting, Lynn, actually. It's a really, really interesting thing. At the time of recording, I've just come back from a big conference in Calgary, a big writing conference, book conference in Calgary called When Words Collide. We've been over here in Canada just over a year, and I still go back to the UK for festivals and things like that and events. And one of the big, big differences that I've noticed between events, book events, and the sort of literary world between Canada and the UK is the audience. So what I've found is audiences here in Canada are very, very attentive. And I would say about 90%, 85, 90% of the audience in events that I've done, whether at conferences or just, my own sort of book events, will be taking notes. Whereas you tend to not get an awful lot of that over in UK events.
Interesting.
I think and this is coming from someone obviously who is a reader and attended these things before I turned professional, is that what you tend to find is with the UK events is that the audience is maybe just there for that single book or that particular writer. Whereas here in North America, I've found that there's maybe a little bit more interest, a little bit more intrigue in the process of writing. How do I get there? It's almost seen, it's taken, I don't want to say it's taken more seriously, because that's not really a fair description for the UK audience. But I think it's taken more practically. It's more of a practical opportunity to quiz writers in how you got to that side of the fence, or how you go about crafting character or plot or whatever, really. But, the thing is, readers are readers, right? We're all readers. Every writer's a reader. You're a reader. I'm a reader. it's still a fantastic opportunity, and everybody always really, really appreciates being in the audience and learning the process. I love to hear the process of other writers, and I've said
same.
this forever.
Yeah.
Being on the panel with 2, 3, 4 other writers or what have you, I'm as much in awe as the audience tends to be, because it's always fascinating to hear. I mentioned it earlier, saying that there's no use in me saying to my students, write 2,000 words a day. When that might not work for you. You might not have the time, you might have the inclination. It's just whatever works. And hearing that echoed, it tends to make me feel all right about myself when I've only managed, say, 25 words, and it's taken me like 6 hours to get that far, and 20 of those words are absolutely awful. So it's nice to share the pain, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. So you're the first cozy crime writer to be interviewed on the Make Meaning podcast.
Fantastic.
Can you tell our listeners about the genre and why you're drawn to it?
Certainly. So cozy mystery or traditional mystery is a subgenre of the crime and mystery, a larger umbrella. And usually what you find is all the parts are still there when it comes to cozy mystery. It just tends to be how it's packaged, how it's delivered. So I always tend to say that the easiest way to describe a cozy mystery is that there's still a murder, but you won't see the knife go in, for example. The knife will either the knife will go in off camera, off stage, or the body will be discovered with the knife already in there. So the general rule of thumb tends to be that there's no gratuitous sex or violence in a cozy murder, or a sort of a forensic deep dive into the investigatory process. And usually what you find is there's a greater emphasis on humor, on character, and on setting. So those are very, very broad rules. And of course, there are plenty of cozy writers out there that break those rules. Sure. Which is what rules are there for, right? Rules are there to be broken. But that's just a very, very broad overview of the difference between cozy and, say, a psychological thriller or a police procedural.
Okay. And so what draws you to it? Why do you like to write in this genre?
Well, I've always loved it. I've always been a big Agatha Christie fan. I think a global resurgence of cozy crime in the last sort of 5-6 years. I know that there are sort of academic studies that have been conducted over the years, not just necessarily in the recent history, that shows an uptake in popularity and sales of the cozy subgenre at times of crisis. Whether that's national crisis, international crisis, global crisis, that type of thing. And we've all suffered a fairly rough few years recently. And I really don't think that there's got to be a positive correlation between the two of them. One thing that I always love about cozy crime is I love character. And I love well-crafted character. I love humor as well. And I love that having that sort of safety net, that safety blanket, and the total escapism of cozy crime. Don't get me wrong. I still do a lot of review work and things, and I read all kinds of crime, all kinds of fiction, in fact. And I still like sinking my teeth into a really, really good mystery that's maybe a police procedural where you will have a greater emphasis on the law enforcement and things like that. But give me a cozy with an amateur detective and I am yours, quite frankly. And it's always good fun. And I think having that total escapism, and I think from a writing perspective as well, like, the Bingo Hall Detectives, it came out in 2022. So I was writing it throughout 2021, tail end of 2020. So that was right smack bang in the middle of the global pandemic and the lockdown and things. And just to be able to sit down and get to know these characters and escape the grim realities of what was going on, because of course I was still working as a journalist at the time, and there's nothing more grim than being a journalist, quite frankly.
During a pandemic, especially, Yeah, that's really, really fascinating. And, so that really brings up kind of a lot. Like, I think that writing humor is a huge challenge. To do it well is quite a skill. Is that something that you felt that you were always just able to do, or did you really have to work at it to get that humor in?
It's very kind of you, Lynn, to assume that I can do it. So thank you very much. I'll take that. That's a win. Yeah, I grew up on a very, very healthy diet of British sitcoms. North American sitcoms as well, but mostly British sitcoms. And there's a wonderful pathos about British humor in particular. Terry Pratchett is a hero of mine. With his Discworld novels and things, and obviously a very, very different genre and subgenres to what I write. But there was always a wonderful, I always, for my money, he always had this wonderful talent of cutting down authority figures with one comment or one line within the dialogue or within the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always something that I hugely admired, because there's nothing more rewarding, there's nothing more fun than having a stuffed shirt, someone
Yeah.
who's in absolute authority, who thinks they've got even more authority than they have.
Yeah.
And I think that's always been part of my humor.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing with the Bingo Hall Detective series, obviously, it follows a mother-in-law and son-in-law amateur detective duo. And with my own mother-in-law, there's lots and lots of humor there. We don't see eye to eye all the time. I don't think any in-law sees eye to eye with their other in-law.
Yeah.
But I think there's always there's a lot of love there, and I loved that relationship. I've always loved that in-law relationship, because two very, very different people in that sort of Venn diagram with the person, and whether it's the daughter or the son in common, and two people who might necessarily never ever have met, or certainly wouldn't hang out or get on. And for me, that was just absolutely ripe for conflict, but it was also ripe for an endearment and humor, as you say, Lynn, and good fun as well. And I mean, that's the thing. Like, again, that's the wonderful thing about cozy crime, is that you get to have fun, and you can have fun on nearly every page, even though there's a horrible murder that has to be solved, or there's a killer on the loose.
Sure.
So yeah, it's hopefully it's good fun. Hopefully.
Awesome. So tell me about your publishing journey. I know you first became a published author in 2015, but you've been writing far longer. So how did that first book come to be published?
My debut was in 2015, as you said, Morbid Relations, which is a sort of dark family drama, so very, very different to crime. To the crime world, and it was published with a very, very small independent publisher in Scotland called Ringwood Publishing, who are still going, as it happens. It was a case of, because I was a journalist, I had quite a few connections, and I built up quite a few connections and contacts within the publishing industry. So I was unrepresented. I didn't have an agent for the longest time.
Okay.
Open submissions to Ringwood at the time. They wanted, I think, 10,000 words, the first 10,000 words of the project. We got chatting about it, sent them the full manuscript, and they offered me a contract for it, which was great. And that, of course, was my foot on the ladder. And it really sort of went on from there. So it wouldn't have been until about 2020 that I got, or 2021, I beg your pardon, where I got an agent, the wonderful people, North Bank in London. And since then, obviously, turned full time now that since I've moved over to Canada. I'm a full-time author, which is a wonderfully privileged position to be in, and getting to write all the time. And it's hard. This is the thing. Like, you spend your whole career, you spend your whole life aspiring to be a full-time writer, and then when it comes along, you go, oh, hold on, this is actually really, really difficult.
You're only as good as your last book, and your next book, actually.
Absolutely that. Yeah.
So you've had 5 books published since that first one, right? 5.
Yeah.
But you've only been represented for like 2 years. So take me through, how many were unagented, and how do you keep up that pace? That's incredible. So
the first 3 were the unagented ones, and then it's only been since the Bingo Hall Detectives came out that I've had an agent. I mean, I think it's a lot of this industry is to do with endurance, I think, and a lot of it is stressed on you as the writer. A lot of it's luck. A lot of it is luck. A lot of it is just being in the right place at the right time. That was the thing. The Bingo Hall Detectives came about through my journalism contacts, actually. And I'd been doing, my publisher in the UK is Harper North, who are a relatively new imprint of HarperCollins.
Okay.
Over here in North America with HarperCollins. Just HarperCollins.
Yeah.
And it was a case of, I'd been doing some review work for Harper North, and the conversation sort of naturally moved towards me being introduced to their wonderful publishing director, Genevieve Pegg, who's now my editor.
Oh, wow.
And I just sent like 4 one-line pitches to her at one point, because she knew I was a writer. She knew that I'd been writing. She said, "What are you working on at the moment, Jonathan?" So I sent her 4 one-line pitches, and she really, really liked the sound of the Bingo Hall, what became the Bingo Hall Detectives. Yeah. Because that was the thing, like, that idea had come to me years ago. And I'm talking about maybe 5-6 years ago.
Okay.
Where I'd been over at my mother-in-law's for Easter. She stays in Northern Ireland, and we'd gone over to visit her for Easter, and there was an old Irish pop star whose name unfortunately escapes me, but she appeared on the television for an interview. And I just completely off the cuff, totally glibly looked over to my mother-in-law, Margaret, and I said, "Margaret, what would happen if she was murdered and you and I had to catch the killer?" And bless her, my mother-in-law turned straight back, and no hint of irony in her voice. She said, there would be two other murders, Jonathan, long before we got anywhere near the killer, namely yours and mine. So it
I
was,
want to meet
and
her. She sounds great.
that was it. Oh, she is great. She's the Bingo Hall Detectives is dedicated to her. Who else could it be dedicated to, right? And there's a don't get me wrong, that like Amita, who's the mother-in-law character in the books, is very, very different to Margaret, but there's a degree of similarity that write what you know, right?
For sure.
But that was it. Yeah, I mean, it was just a one-line pitch, and they really loved it. And I've been with Harper North ever since, and it's great. I mean, we're 2 books down in the series now. The third one I've just sent across a couple of weeks ago.
Congrats!
And then there'll be a fourth in 2025. So it's just grown arms and legs. It's been remarkable.
So what's your practice like? Like, how do you write? Do you have like a daily thing, or how do you do it? Yeah.
I try to get something down every day, particularly if I'm working on a new project. So I'm taking a couple of weeks off at the moment because I'm not going to start the 4th Bingo Hall books until September. I've decided that I'm going to start working on that in September because, of course, the edits are going to come back for the 3rd one with a view to coming out next spring. Yeah, and that tends to distract me. But I mean, that's the thing, Lynn. I love to write. I love the process of writing. It's not. Sometimes it feels like a chore. Sometimes it feels like hard work. But it's not the hard work that I used to do, right? Yes. And I try to write something down every day, even if I'm not working on a new project. I'll try to, either if it's like a one line of dialogue that I hear, or a profile for a character or something that I can use later on. I like to do it when I am working on a project. Then it's sort of maybe 2-3 hours in the morning, break for lunch, and then 2-3 hours where I have to go pick up my son from daycare, and then maybe in the evenings I'll do a little bit of editing. It just really depends on where I am in the book. If it's the first sort of 5 chapters, then that tends to be quite intense, and quite a lot of editing goes into that. Sure. Then this, up until about 30,000-40,000 words, it can be a little bit, maybe, I don't want to say lackadaisical, but it's not quite as intense. Yeah. And then the sort of second half of a novel, because my novels are always around about 95,000 words, it tends to be quite intense, and it will be, I'll set myself a limit, set myself a target. Sure. I'm keeping my agent and the publishers in touch with. One thing that I will say is it's the fallout from being a journalist is that I never miss a deadline. Yeah. If anything, I actually always beat my deadlines, and my agent and my editors are always say that they know that if they set me a deadline, they always go, Jonathan, we'll give you this date, but we know it's going to be in long before it. But and I'm grateful for that. Don't get me wrong. I'm really grateful that it's not the worst thing in the world, right? Far from it. Right.
So, and you're a relatively new father, yes? How old is your son?
I am. Yep. Yeah. Henry's 2.5.
2.5. So you're really in the thick of it, like very hands-on. And that must be a big juggle. That's a very nice way of putting it, Lynn. Yeah. Very nice way of putting it. Well, I have 4 kids, so I completely understand. And it was like in 4 years. So it's just like there was a time when I was sweating all the time and people hanging off me and bags of gear and stuff. And so thankfully those times are past. It does go by, but enjoy it while you can, if you can. Absolutely. But is it a juggle? Is it hard? I mean, you're not doing the journalism anymore, so that must be a relief.
Yeah, I'm not doing as much. It's not, I was an online journalist for 12 years for a major tabloid newspaper in the UK, and I loved it. Loved every single second. As I said in my leavers speech, some of my fondest memories were in that newsroom. Some of my very worst memories were in that newsroom. Sometimes they were only hours apart. Sometimes they were minutes apart. And I love journalism. I still got lots and lots of friends in contact within the industry, and it never ever leaves you. You can never switch it off. But it's been nice, like I said, it's been nice to be able to focus on my writing over the last sort of year, 15 months or so, and dip into my journalism than being chained to the desk 8 days a week, Yeah. And in terms of kind of juggling, again, very, very supportive family. It's hard, don't get me wrong, it's hard. Like as I mentioned before, I'm still back and forth across the Atlantic for events and away I was away again at time of recording. I was away for a weekend, and my wife was with Henry for the whole weekend, and she's wonderful. She's as much a mother to me as she is to Henry, and she's very much the matriarch of this family, and I couldn't do it without them, without their support and without their help and without them just constantly being there. In fact, the Village Hall Vendetta is dedicated to both of them, and that's just a very, very, very small thank you to their endless support. Yeah. But as I always say, I mean, that's the thing, one of the big things that I always try and put across in my classes, and anybody that asks, anybody that cares to listen, is that to get a book on a shelf
Mhm.
It takes a village.
It
It
does.
really, really takes a village, whether that's friends and family to support you as the writer to give you time to write it,
Yeah.
or from the professional point of view, when it's marketing people, editors, salespeople, the publishers,
Mhm.
the printing of it as well. It genuinely does take a village. It might be one name on the front, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's more than that one name
Yeah.
that takes it to get to that stage. And I am so appreciative, so very, very appreciative of all the help and all the support that I've been given now for years. I can't believe that. I
Yeah.
still feel like a rookie.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, I got chills when you said it because it's really true. And people don't realize that. They just think, oh,
Yeah.
celebrity author. But, there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes. So I want to ask you something about, the difference between Canada and the UK. And I would say the US also, like I was in Scotland, as you know, in May, met a lot of authors. The topics they wrote about, I don't know if some of them would find a publisher in the States and vice
Yeah.
versa. The marketing can be different. The audience
Yeah.
expects different things. I was up in Northumbria for a while and I bought a book by L.J. Ross. So anyway, I can't find L.J. Ross on any shelves in the States, but
Yeah.
I was at, oh my God, I'm forgetting it now, Bamberg Castle.
Oh yeah.
And so there was a book about Bamberg Castle and I was at Holy Island and all these places. And so I'm like, oh, cool. I like reading local stories. And it was a cute little mystery. And so that's a whole series writer that we don't have, but it has, a huge audience in the UK. So I'd love to hear how or if your marketing has changed or had to change or expanded so you can include North American readers while
Yeah.
still holding on to your loyal readers back across the pond.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a really interesting point that you make, Lynn. I think there are no changes really between the publication of my books either side of the Atlantic. So it means that when you pick up the Bingo Hall Detectives in Edmonton or Calgary or Halifax or Los Angeles or what have you,
Mm-hmm.
it's the same as it would be if you picked up in Liverpool, Glasgow, London,
Mm-hmm.
etc.
So wait, so the cover's the same?
Cover's exactly the same.
Okay.
This is where I get to show off how much of a book nerd I am, and I'm proud about it. I'm proud until I start talking about it. But the only difference is between the covers. The books are bigger actually over here in North America, as in they're physically bigger. They're a bigger size.
Is that true just in Canada or also in the US? Because I noticed books are bigger in Canada than they are here.
I believe it's. I think it will depend on the publisher, but I believe it might be both.
Okay.
Up both sides of our border.
Okay, interesting.
I'm not sure. Don't quote me on it. But one of the really really fascinating parts that I really love, and this is the great thing about my editor Jen, because she let me know obviously when HarperCollins Canada we're going to be making a big thing of it, obviously because I'd moved over here, and she said, "Here we go, Jonathan. Here's the cover. It's exactly the same, but for two major differences or minor differences, I guess."
Okay.
The first one is that it includes a novel underneath the title. So instead of it just being The Bingo Hall Detectives or The Village Hall Vendetta, it's Bingo Hall Detectives, a novel, The Village Hall Vendetta, a novel. The other difference, and this is what got my book nerd spidey senses tingling, is that the quotes from the endorsement quotes that I've got on the front covers of them, rather than have two quote marks, it's just the one. And apparently that's just a style difference. That's just a style thing between either side of the Atlantic.
Okay.
And nobody would notice this, right?
No.
I probably wouldn't have even noticed it unless somebody flagged it up to me. But it's just these little sort of intricate details that are different. The book itself is exactly the same. It's exactly the same. And I think there's probably a degree of it being a cozy crime that makes that difference. Is that, again, location is so integral to the series. So it means you couldn't really transpose Penrith in the Lake District of the UK for, say, where I am, Grand Prairie in Alberta. Yeah. Because they're very, very different, very, very similar, but very, very different as well, and different culture and things like that.
Sure.
So what I've found is I've had to do a lot more explanation actually than I thought. So one of the big things is one of the biggest feedback or best feedback that I've had for the Bingo Hall Detectives is the chapter titles. So the chapter titles are bingo calls in the UK, because now, and I didn't know this till I came over here, but bingo, in terms of the functionality of it as a game either side of the Atlantic, is principally the same thing. Okay. However, the numbers are different in the UK to what they are in North America. So I understand in North America, it's things like D17, F4, B6, that type of thing. Whereas in the UK, it's just a number. And there's this sort of subculture within the UK bingo where it's sort of rhyming slang for every or a rhyming phrase for every number. So, for example, number one is Kelly's eye. So that's what the bingo caller will say. They'll go Kelly's eye number one. They'll go one little duck number two, because it kind of looks like a duck, I suppose.
Huh.
So all the chapter titles in the Bingo Hall Detectives are named after the relevant bingo call for that number. Chapter one is Kelly's eye, and so on and so forth. I've had to explain this, and I'll be honest with you, Lynn. Some of the expressions that I've had in rooms all over Canada, actually, I've been blank, vacant, perplexed, delighted as well. I should add. So little things like that. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's like I've grown up with bingo. You know, my grandmother was an addict to a bingo addict, and that's where the ideas came from and stuff. So it's been quite nice for me to explain these types of things on various events and podcasts and shows like this. I think it adds almost to the mythos. I think it adds that sense of place, and hopefully sort of opens that door to the type of humor that's held within. Hopefully.
Yeah. Now, are you finding that Canadian readers already knew about you and the books, or is this new for them?
On the most part, I think it's new for them. I mean, what's amazed me is just how widely available it is from coast to coast. I mean, that's like a dream come true for me as an author, for any author, I guess. I mean, I've been into Indigo and chapter stores all over Canada now, and it's always there. It's always on the shelves, and I always get really nervous, like when I go into the stores. Like I'll go in and I'll go and check if the book's on the shelf already, and then I'll be as polite as I can and go up to the staff and ask them if they want me to sign the copies for the store. And nobody's ever said no yet, but I always get really, really nervous that they'll go, absolutely not, Jonathan. Why on earth would we let you deface our books? But they've never done it, and they're always delightful to chat to. And it's one of the really, really lovely parts of being an author, is that you get to speak to booksellers in that capacity all over the world now, which is really, really remarkable.
I will tell you, Colleen Hoover, the novelist, you know Colleen Hoover?
Yeah.
She goes into Walmart and she just takes her books and starts signing. She doesn't tell them ahead of time. So that's the difference between an American and somebody from the UK or Canada, who are much nicer people. But
we're clearly still far too sensitive and suffering too much from our own sense of place.
Yeah. So as we near the end of our conversation, I wonder if you have any advice for our listeners about writing, publishing, building an audience, any last words to leave them with?
Well, one of the things that I always try and impart in my workshops and things, it's a phrase. It sounds a bit cliched, but actually it's a mantra that I try to live by, particularly before you become, say, a full-time writer, indeed a published writer. And that phrase is, you don't have to be a professional writer to be professional about your writing. And in short, that means that educate yourself in the industry. It is an industry. It's a multi-billion-dollar global industry. And again, I always tell the students, you wouldn't be expected to go and perform open heart surgery on someone without first going to medical school, or you wouldn't be expected to work in Wall Street without knowing how all of that system works, without that education. And the publishing industry is exactly the same. So this can be something simple as knowing, if you're at that querying stage, knowing what agents are open for submission. If they are open, what are they looking for? Is it the first 10,000 words? Is it the first 5 chapters? What do they want in their cover letter? I mean, save yourself time, but also come across as being professional too, right? And I always add the caveat that a lot of this industry, like I said before, a lot of it is luck. A lot of it's being in the right place at the right time. But I think you can make a lot of your own luck in this industry, and you can save yourself a lot of time as well by, for example, there's no use, if you've written a crime novel, sending it to an agent who only specializes in sci-fi and fantasy or romance or what have you. Save yourself time and be professional about it. Do them the professional courtesy of doing your research, education, know how the industry works. And just arm yourself with as much knowledge as you can. And like I said, try to be as professional as you can. You don't need to be a pro writer to be professional about your own writing. And that goes all the way back to when you start and you sit down and you work and you do the work and then you edit it and get it into as best shape as possible. And always be flexible. I always say that to my students. Always be flexible in every element of the industry, whether that's deciding what road to go down with your narrative, adding in a particular character, losing characters, or indeed taking sort of suggestions and taking feedback from editors or agents or publishers. Just always be flexible and always be open to learning.
Love it. I love it. Well, Jonathan Whitelaw, thank you so much for being on the Make Meaning podcast.
Not at all. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Make Meaning podcast with Lynne Golodner. You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like what you've heard, subscribe and share this episode with the meaningful people in your world. And please leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. You can learn more at makemeaning.org or lynnegolodner.com.